Welcome to Health Policy, Organization, and Finance. This is your Week 7 video. Last week we discussed long-term care, and you had an overview of what long-term care is and did a long-term care analysis in your discussion posts. This week we're going to talk about what's considered maybe the opposite of long-term care, which is acute care. I'm also going to give you a new tool for your health policy analysis toolbox. The fourth tool you'll have is called evaluation. So now your four tools will be cost, quality, access, and evaluation. You can use these four tools to analyze any health policy. You can use them to analyze any policy in general, although they are better suited for health policy. In your career as public health professionals, you might come up with other tools, and that's fine. These are really just to help you, again, think about how to wrap your head around the various parts of policy and what makes policy. So week 7 is about acute care. What is acute care? Acute care is really short-term treatment. It's considered the opposite from long-term care, or sometimes called chronic care. Acute care is really the treatment of injuries, illness, includes surgery, pre- and post-surgery, any kind of urgent conditions that a person might have. Who provides acute care? Now, when we talk about acute care, we're usually talking about the hospital or the hospital system. Some of you probably have some experience working in a hospital system. This is called the acute care network. Usually, it includes trauma, the emergency room, critical care, surgery units, cancer units, those specialty units that you find within a hospital. How much does acute care cost? Well, you might remember from weeks 1, and we talked about this in weeks 2 and in weeks 3, that acute care is really the most expensive care. How much does it cost? Who knows? We don't know because that cost can be different from hospital to hospital, from state to state. Just as an average, Vermont's average hospital day in 2016 was slightly over $2,000. It was about $2,200, which is somewhat similar to New England, but can be very different from other states. In Vermont, in 2016, fixing a broken leg had an average cost of about $7,500. Now, that's fascinating because you might not need to stay overnight in the hospital with a broken leg. So a lot of times it's confusing because if you think, oh, we have an average hospital day and I went to the hospital to get my leg fixed and I was there less than a day, shouldn't it be less than an average hospital day? Well, yes, but this is combined really with that fee-for-service that we mostly operate on. So who pays for acute care? Well, acute care is covered by Medicare and Medicaid and private insurance. A lot of times acute care is really the care that we think about as the very costly care that could get us into financial trouble. So it's usually covered by all different types of policies. Often prices are negotiated through these various payers. So Medicare, Medicaid, and private insurance might all negotiate a different price for something like a hip replacement with an acute care establishment. So who pays for acute care? Pretty much everyone pays for acute care. But again, how much does it cost? Well, that's hard to answer. It goes back to that fee-for-service conversation we had back in week 2. Side note, because I usually get asked this, is there something in between long-term care and acute care? And the answer is yes. There's actually quite a few models that are somewhere in between acute care and long-term care. An example of this, many states have an LTAC, which is a long-term acute care hospital. And those are usually for folks that spend a long time in the hospital and need really daily medical attention, probably more than what you would get at a nursing home, but really less than what you would get in a hospital. And they would go to something like an LTAC. Some people will call it a subacute. So some examples of that might be a person who's on a ventilator, ongoing dialysis, people who get specific transfusions or injectable medications, complex wound care for people who have long pressure wounds or maybe for burns. Most states have basically these in-between type of facilities. There's no really great place to put these, so I've put it under acute care. You are welcome to Google and see if there's an LTAC or a subacute near you, and see what exactly they offer. The financing with these in-between examples, it can get a little complicated, so we won't go into it. I just generally want you to know that there is something in between long-term chronic care and acute care. So let's look at our tools to look at acute care. So acute care as a policy, is it expensive? Yeah, it's really expensive. So for costs, acute care, we all know, is really drastically more expensive than other types of care. Also, how much you pay for acute care is often unclear or confusing or changeable. So costs, when you just look at acute care, is very complex. Quality, hard to tell. How do we know? What are the outcomes? Are they tracked? This is a very new area of public health and looking at how we judge acute care outcomes. And if you go into your readings after the lecture this week, you're actually going to see this is what the week is all about. Access. Acute care actually has much broader access than other types of care. As we learned last week, it's really hard to access long-term care, much easier to access acute care. And the mechanism for that is usually through the emergency room. So there is quite a bit more access in acute care than other types of care. And then our new tool, so evaluation. So when we're looking for good policy, one of the things we want to look for is, does it get evaluated? So when you're looking at a health policy and you want to analyze the policy using your tool of evaluation, you should ask yourself a couple of questions. Does the policy have a straightforward mechanism to evaluate itself? Sometimes in the actual bill or regulation or policy, the evaluation process will be clearly laid out. Also ask yourself who collects the results? What's the purpose? How often is it done? Is the evaluation accurate? Is it fair? Is it timely? Good policy really should have a way to reflect upon itself, so that we know that not only is it doing what it's supposed to do, but it's not failing, or it's not actually harming public health. So this week, you have a discussion post. There is no reading from the text. There are multiple readings, and you really get a chance to look at a policy that has emphasis on evaluation. Now the question will be, is it good evaluation? And is that evaluation make it good policy? So I'm excited to see everyone's responses. As always, reach out with questions, comments, or concerns, and have a great week.